Hey everyone, thanks for joining me in our second video in our nutrition series. Today we're going to be talking about metabolism and macronutrients. We're going to do a little bit of science, so hopefully it doesn't get too boring, but we'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So let's get started here. So metabolism, what is that? It's the process by which your body will convert the calories in what you eat and drink into the energy that your body actually needs in order to function. So breaking down the foods that you eat into energy. What does your body actually use energy for? The first thing people talk about is what's called the basal or resting metabolic rate. That's essentially the calories that your body uses in order to function at rest. So doing things like oxygenating your body, producing urine, doing things that your body does without you having to think about it. We talk about eating calories versus burning calories. These are the calories that you're burning just to do those innate functions. You're also going to have digestion and heat production. Your body uses energy to produce heat, as well as physical activity. You can see that chart here, how it's broken down by percentage. This is a scary slide. Try not to look too closely to it, but all I want you to see are the red circles here. So metabolism of these macronutrients, the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the fats or lipids. And they will break down through all this big process into ATP or energy, which is just a term for energy. Another scary slide, but essentially just the nutrients that we're talking about, these are large nutrients. So when we break them down, we're going to be breaking them down into not only energy, but also the building blocks, which will create these large macronutrients. These are the building blocks down here, the precursors, amino acids, sugars, and fatty acids. And also just to show you that your body will also use these precursors and the energy that you've made in order to produce macromolecules of the cell. So your body will make its own proteins, lipids, and sugars for various functions of the cells in your body. All right, so let's delve into one of these macronutrients, fats first. We kind of talked about this in the last video, saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Your saturated fats are your bad fats. They're going to be in meats, butter, dairy products. They're the solids at room temperature, so like butter. And the reason these are the bad fats is because they will increase your level of bad cholesterol, which is called low density lipoprotein or LDL. The reason these are bad, or this is the bad cholesterol, is because it increases the cholesterol in your arteries. It clogs your arteries, which will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, things like strokes and heart attacks. As you can see here, the trans fats are a little bit different from saturated fats, but they will do the same thing. They will also increase your bad cholesterol. The unsaturated fats, on the other hand, are considered good fats. Those are things like oils. They're always liquids at room temperature. And the reason these are good are because they increase the levels of your good cholesterol, which is your high density lipoprotein or HDL. The reason the HDL is good is because it actually decreases the amount of LDL in your body. It causes it to be broken down and removed. So the HDL is the good guy, and it will fight the LDL, which is the bad guy. So you want to have a good ratio of good guy to bad guy. Saturated fats, like we talked about, solids at room temperature. This is just to show you the trans fats. These are things that are not natural. They're kind of biochemically produced. So things like margarine. You can talk about like preserved soups, canned soups, and just some various things that are processed and made like in factories, not natural. You also want to talk about essential fatty acids, which are unsaturated fats or good fats that your body can't make without dietary supplement. So your body has to have these through the diet in order to use them to function. So these are things like omega-3s and omega-6s, and this is just a chart that shows some good foods for these sources of foods for this. And again, your body cannot make these omega-3s and omega-6s, so you have to take them in through your diet. Protein. So the building blocks for protein are something called amino acids. There are actually 20 different kinds of amino acids, but only 9 of them are considered essential, which I've circled here. And again, essential means that your body can't produce them. You have to take them in through your diet. So they have essential molecules within these amino acids that you need for your body to function. There are different types of protein, not only meats, which is what we usually assume, but you can also have plant-based proteins. This is what vegetarians will get their proteins from. Nuts, seeds, soy, legumes like beans and peas, fruits, veggies, and whole grains are good sources of plant-based proteins. And then animal-based, you not only get your meats and poultry, seafood, but also eggs, dairy, and of course processed meats like sausage are other sources of animal-based proteins. The fat content of animal proteins are going to vary based on what the breed of the animal is, as well as what the muscle is used for. So that's when you talk about light meats and dark meats on like a turkey or a chicken. The light meats are going to be the leaner meats or the less fatty meats. The reason we talk about lean meats is because the non-lean meats, or the really fatty type of animal proteins, are going to be high in saturated fat, the bad fat, and it's going to increase your risk of not only heart disease, but also obesity, diabetes, and even some types of cancer. So we will always recommend that you try to eat mainly lean meats when you're going to choose an animal protein, like poultry or fish are good examples of lean meats. Next, we're going to talk about carbohydrates. We talked about this in the last video, simple versus complex carbohydrates. The complex ones are the ones we want to try to choose, and that's because they are larger molecules that your body has to break down longer, so you stay fuller longer and you actually get more energy from them. So the simple carbohydrates are going to be your glucose molecules, and fructose and galactose are other examples. So these are just a single molecule. So that's why it's the building block, because the bigger, more complex carbohydrates are going to be made up of thousands of these. The first one is called glucose, which is again just the basic building block of all carbohydrates. Fructose is another, and that's one that naturally occurs in sugar. It's a naturally occurring sugar in things like fruits or honey. Which is fine, but you do have to be aware that you can only eat so much of a good thing, because if it is eaten in excess, your body will convert it to fat. And eating it in excess, you want to think about high fructose corn syrup, which is something that's in products like soda pop. So disaccharides, these are 2 of the building blocks. So the first is sucrose, which is just simple table sugar. Lactose, which is milk sugar, and this is the product that people who are lactose intolerant, this is what they cannot digest appropriately. And then maltose is the third one, which is malt sugar, which is made from the breakdown of starch. So polysaccharides, these are the complex carbohydrates, and you can see in this picture here how big these things are. So again, this is one glucose molecule, and this is a starch, a complex carbohydrate. It's made up of thousands of these glucose molecules. So starch is one example. Starch is one example of a complex carbohydrate. There's also glycogen, which is something that your body actually makes in order to store glucose. And cellulose is the other one. This is something that is common in most hard plants, hard chewy plants, and that's going to have the most fiber. So we're going to talk about taking in fiber in your diet. There's 2 different types, insoluble and soluble. Soluble just means that it is can be dissolved in water, and so your body can digest it. The benefits of soluble fiber include lowering your blood cholesterol, staying fuller for longer, and improving your blood glucose levels, your blood sugar levels. Insoluble fiber is actually something that your body cannot digest fully, so it's going to go all the way through your system. And these are good for your colon health, and it actually helps to prevent constipation, helps treat constipation. So whenever you get like a colonoscopy and the gastroenterologist tells you to eat more fiber, this is what he's talking about. Fiber is going to be present in whole fruits, good chewy vegetables, dark leafy vegetables, beans, lentils, and whole grains. Not the white breads and the white rice, but the whole grains, dark brown breads, brown rice. Food sources are actually better than just taking a fiber supplement, but you can take a fiber supplement if that's the only choice that you have. But again, too much of a good thing can be bad. So too much fiber can cause some gassy pains and bloating. So you want to watch out for that. And lastly, I want to talk about something called glycemic index. This is a value that is assigned to foods based on how quickly or slowly it'll raise your blood glucose or blood sugar levels. So if something has a high glycemic index, what it does is it quickly raises the level of your blood sugar, but then it will also quickly drop and actually goes down lower than it was before, so it can actually cause a low blood sugar level. Things that have a high glycemic index is something like a candy bar. So it'll raise your sugar pretty quick, but it will also drop you down because it's not going to be good. You're not having good digestion with it. It's not a good source of carbohydrate for your blood glucose. And just as a baseline, glucose in itself has a glycemic index of 100. So everything is compared to glucose. And 100 would be considered very high glycemic index. In this picture here, you can see some different types of foods that have a high glycemic index. Any type of junk foods are going to be in this, but also starchy foods and white breads like we talked about, and even some fruits that are very sugary fruits are going to be raising your blood glucose levels quickly and then bringing them back down quickly. And again, over here, you can see, after 2 hours, your blood sugar level is actually lower than it was to start with. Things that have lower glycemic index are going to be just slowly increasing your blood sugar, and then it's a more steady fall, more gradual fall. And these are things like, again, whole fruits that are less sugary fruits, vegetables, whole grain. So pretty much all the good foods that are good for you. So again, high glycemic index foods are going to be 70 and above. And remember that glucose in and of itself is 100. And low glycemic index foods are going to be 55 or below. We're going to talk about glycemic index in an upcoming video. So hopefully everyone is still awake, but this is just a quick recap. Essentially, everything you eat is going to be broken down in your body to make energy and building blocks for producing other cell components. So protein, you break it down into make energy and amino acids for proteins. And your body's going to use those two products in order to make proteins for cells specifically. It's important to have essential fatty acids and essential amino acids in your diet because your body can't make them otherwise. Remember that saturated and trans fats will increase your risk for heart disease, but the unsaturated fats will actually decrease your risk for heart disease. And foods with a lower glycemic index will keep your blood sugar steady so that you don't spike and then crash. So hopefully this wasn't too boring. Hopefully you learned something, and tune in again next week for another video. Thanks, guys.